On this Saturday night, no end in sight. As the war in the Middle East enters its second month, Houthi rebels join the fight.
It further complicates the efforts to try and end this.
Why it's fueling fears over another critical choke point for the global oil industry. Out on bail, Tiger Woods is accused of impaired driving after his SUV rollover, where it leaves the golf superstar's career. Plus, a whale of a discovery.
It was unbelievable.
What a Canadian biologist's research reveals about these elusive mammals.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Now, 1 month into the war on Iran, launched by the U.S. and Israel, the conflict is showing no signs of slowing. A warship carrying thousands more U.S. troops has just arrived in the Middle East. Iran is intensifying its attacks on U.S. targets across the region. And a new player has now entered the fight. Yemen's Houthi rebels just carried out their first military operation in support of Iran, opening a new front in the widening war. Candice Cole has our top story tonight.
In a new escalation in the month-long war between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, Yemen's Iranian-backed Houthis entered the conflict, launching strikes on Israel.
فإن القوات المسلحة اليمنية
Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Sarria saying the missiles launched in their first military operation targeted sensitive Israeli military sites. The missiles were intercepted by Israeli forces.
It's obviously not a good sign for Israelis who are going to be subject to these attacks. It's not a good sign for oil and products moving through the Middle East. And it further complicates the efforts to try and end this in a way that will allow both sides to somehow claim victory.
The Houthis' involvement follows Iranian strikes on Israel, not far from Tel Aviv Friday, damaging buildings and injuring civilians, and an attack on an American base in Saudi Arabia, injuring at least 12 U.S. service members. As Iran and its proxies continue to escalate, the blockage of the critical Strait of Hormuz continues to wreak havoc on global oil supply, keeping markets on a roller coaster. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the U.S. will end its war in Iran within weeks, not months, though experts find the off-ramp to further fighting elusive, with U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed 15-point plan to peace, leaving Iran virtually defenseless.
Iran has responded with its maximalist positions, which is it wants control of the Strait of Hormuz, it wants compensation, it wants an apology for aggression. Given the narcissism of Donald Trump and the existential situation that the Iranians are in, it's difficult to see how they come together.
Saturday, Iran's exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi appealed to conservative Americans for the U.S. to stay the course.
We must finish the job. This regime in its entirety must go.
New concern is now growing over possible shipping disruptions in the Red Sea caused by the Houthis entering the war. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
Lebanese authorities say 3 journalists were killed today in an Israeli strike. 2 prominent TV reporters and a cameraman died when their vehicle was hit. Israel described one of the victims as a terrorist posing as a journalist. Hezbollah rejected those claims and accused Israel of deliberately targeting reporters who were covering the conflict. The U.S. president touted what he described as successful operations in both Venezuela and Iran during a speech last night at an investment forum in Miami. And Trump also quipped about where the U.S. military's focus could shift next.
Built this great military. I said, you'll never have to use it, but sometimes you have to use it. And Cuba's next, by the way, but pretend I didn't say that, please. Pretend I didn't say that. Please, 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 media, please. Disregard that statement. Thank you very much. Cuba's next.
This is what democracy looks like.
President Trump's foreign interventions are one of the issues fueling mass protests this weekend. Millions of Americans took to the streets for the latest nationwide No Kings protests. Demonstrators condemning the Trump administration's alleged abuses of power and dismantling of democratic institutions. Emotions were especially high in Minnesota, which became the focal point for Trump's immigration crackdown after federal agents killed 2 U.S. citizens there. American music legend Bruce Springsteen joined the rallies.
The power and the solidarity of the people of Minneapolis and of Minnesota was an inspiration to the entire country. Your strength and your commitment told us that this is still America.
Americans and others around the world held their own demonstrations, including right here in Canada, with rallies in Vancouver and Toronto. They were joined by other countries such as Spain and Italy. TSA agents in the U.S. should begin receiving paychecks again starting Monday after President Trump signed an executive order to end weeks of long lines and delays at American airports. Airport staff who screen luggage and provide security have not been paid since February 14th as a result of a stalemate on Capitol Hill over a bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security. Hundreds of workers have since quit or stopped showing up for their shifts. House Republican leaders rejected the bill again on Friday after the Democrats refused to include funding for the administration's controversial immigration enforcement, or ICE. Well, it's been a big weekend for members of the NDP who have gathered in Winnipeg for the party's convention to determine its next federal leader. Candidates are making their final pitches for this last day of voting before tomorrow's announcement of the winner. Whoever prevails faces the tough task of reviving the party after its worst ever election result last year. Our Melissa Ridgen is at the convention, where organizers are reporting a record turnout. Melissa.
Jeff, the NDP say they've set a new convention record with more than 2,000 attendees here and a 67% growth in memberships. They say it's energized by the leadership race. 5 candidates made their final push Saturday morning. Social worker Nathaniel Johnston.
I've spent my career fighting against systems at every level that are built to keep people struggling.
Dock worker Rob Ashton.
We built this party! So let's rebuild it together!
And organic farmer Tony McQuail.
We need bold, brave, and beautiful alternatives to a world being burned and blown apart by greed.
All 5 NDP leadership hopefuls believe the future will grow from the left. Frontrunner Avi Lewis with eyes on stealing support from the Liberals.
There's an immense amount of political space for the NDP in this moment. There's no party which is speaking up clearly and consistently against war. There's no party that is speaking up clearly and consistently about getting off the most destabilizing force in the global economy right now, which is oil.
Edmonton Strathcona MP Heather McPherson is the only leadership hopeful with a seat in Parliament.
Our job is to rebuild a new Democratic Party, not just for New Democrats, but for Canadians across the country, because our democracy is stronger, our House of Commons and our Parliament works better when there is a strong New Democratic Party.
Energy, housing, and affordability were among the 70 policy proposals debated by a party in need of serious refresh. A poll this week found 2/3 of past NDP voters were either unsure who would make the best leader or didn't know the candidates. While 24% feel the party is irrelevant and 39% say its best days are behind it. Leadership hopefuls disagree.
But there is another path, and it's our job as the NDP to light the way.
To climb out of that hole, Jeff, the party needs a leader who can turn internal momentum into a national movement. They'll know who will take up that challenge Sunday.
Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg. Thanks, Melissa. A fire at the top of a Toronto building shut down roads and sent debris flying into the street. Take a look at this. Emergency crews were called to the building in downtown Toronto on Friday evening after a fire ruptured propane cylinders, sending flames and thick smoke into the sky. Incredibly, no injuries were reported. The cause is now under investigation. Tiger Woods has been released from jail after he was arrested Friday afternoon on suspicion of impaired driving after he allegedly caused a car crash near his home in Florida. It marks yet another setback for the golf great, following a series of other crashes and serious injuries. Nathaniel Dove reports on what it all means for his storied career.
Oh!
Perhaps the greatest golfer ever released on bail.
And Mr. Woods was overtaking him at a high rate of speed before he clipped the back end and rolled his vehicle over on the driver's door.
Florida police arrested Tiger Woods Friday afternoon, charging him with driving under the influence after he crashed his SUV into another vehicle.
He was lethargic on scene, but that, we believe, was because of what he was intoxicated on.
Police say Woods did submit to a breathalyzer, which returned a 0. Officers at the scene believed he was impaired on some medication or drug. Woods did not submit to a urine test. Global News reached out through his agent for comment. We did not hear back by deadline.
There is a Florida statute which he will be charged with for refusing to take that test, but we will never get definitive results as to what he was impaired on at the time of the crash.
A viral but fake social media post suggested U.S. President Donald Trump asked Florida's governor to pardon Woods.
There was an accident, and that's all I know. Very close friend of mine.
It's his 4th car crash. One in 2021 nearly required doctors to amputate his right leg, Woods has said, and he's had more than a dozen surgeries, including 7 on his back. Just days earlier,
Tiger, just a casual 3-degree launch angle. It's like he never left.
Woods was asked about competing in the upcoming Masters tournament about 2 weeks away. It's where he won some of his most legendary victories.
It's just this body, it doesn't recover like it was when I was 24, 25. Doesn't mean I'm not trying. I've been trying for a while.
Woods has not competed on the PGA Tour since missing the cut at the British Open in 2024. He's tied for the most tour wins ever, but hasn't won since 2019. The question hanging over him, now age 50, can he persevere to again compete at the highest level? Nathaniel Dove, Global News, Toronto.
And strike 3 called. That's number 11 for Gausman.
Toronto Blue Jays pitcher Kevin Gausman got the team's 50th season off to a record-breaking start. Gausman threw a franchise record 11 strikeouts in a win over the Athletics in the team's first game of the year Friday night. Banning social media coming up. Another country joins the growing list of those restricting social media use for children. Well, do not adjust your TV set. That was the view in Western Australia, where residents were seeing red. An approaching cyclone stirred up iron-rich dust, creating an eerie blood-red sky over this caravan park. The storm just missed the area, but left a thick layer of dust in its wake. As we've been reporting, people around the world are struggling with the high price of oil and gas caused by the Iran war, and perhaps nowhere more so than in Asia. The vast majority of exports that flow through the Strait of Hormuz are destined for that continent, and the Iranian regime's blockade is now sparking shortages and panic. Redmond Shannon reports.
For weeks now, people in India have been lining up to fill up their vehicles and the cylinders so many Indians use for cooking. India's government says there is no fuel shortage. They say panic buying is being driven by misinformation and that the country has 2 months of fuel reserves. Still, on Friday, it cut fuel taxes to manage rising prices.
The common citizen will not have to face any increase in the price of petrol or diesel.
In the Philippines, the president also says reserves are healthy, but he is looking to pivot to new sources.
The reason that I declared an energy emergency is to provide government with more options should the need arise.
Elsewhere in Asia, shortages are very real. To save energy, Sri Lanka has declared every Wednesday a public holiday. And Myanmar is limiting how often citizens can buy gasoline.
Every time there's an oil price shock, it's the least developed economies that feel the most impact. They haven't got the resilience, the broader shoulders.
China is able to source oil and gas from Russia, although Moscow has now banned gasoline exports for 4 months. Fellow Asian power Japan has fewer options and is now tapping into its reserves. Helium is also exported from the Gulf, a crucial gas in producing microchips. Taiwan is the worldwide hub for that industry, which is key to every type of technology. This plastics factory in South Korea also relies on oil from the Middle East to make its raw materials. The manager says he's had to slash production and may have to shut down within weeks if the Strait of Hormuz stays closed. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Indonesia has now joined a growing list of countries imposing restrictions on young people using social media. Children under the age of 16 will now be blocked from platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. The government says the ban's enforcement will be gradual, and companies that don't comply could face fines or suspension. Indonesia is now the first country in Southeast Asia to implement a ban. It follows similar policies in Australia and several European nations. Still ahead, sticker shock, why some major retailers are adopting digital price tags. Paper price tags could soon be disappearing from your local supermarket shelves, with some major grocery chains looking to go digital. The switch to digital price tags follows an industry trend among some major retailers. As Ann Gaviola explains, some experts worry that shoppers could pay the price.
2 days. That's how long it used to take employees to change paper price labels on the 120,000 items in a typical Walmart store. With digital tags, it takes minutes.
It really allows retailers to change prices by store, by region immediately.
The world's largest retailer is switching to electronic shelf labels, known as ESLs, at all its U.S. stores later this year. The biggest grocery retailers in Canada have also dabbled in digital labels, with Sobeys on track to switch to ESLs this year. The savings on labor costs are obvious, but consumer groups worry about the potential for algorithmic and targeted pricing made possible by digital price tags and AI. These types of algorithms are already used in the travel industry.
If you buy an airline ticket very early, it's usually cheaper. And as it gets closer and closer to sold out, it will get more and more expensive.
Another concern is surge pricing, used by services like Uber, where prices are set based on real-time supply and demand.
People need coffee more in the morning, so should they charge 20% more?
Though proponents say ESLs could help reduce mistakes on the cost of items and present more deals, similar to what's already available in other industries.
Happy hour at restaurants, where if you go early, you get a deal.
But AI technology can enable targeted pricing. In December, Instacart found itself in hot water in the U.S. over what critics called predatory grocery pricing, pushing up costs on certain items for some customers.
What scares people is the fact that based on their demographics and personal information footprint, that they're going to pay more than other people based on that.
Experts Global News spoke to say backlash against Canadian companies that misuse ESL technology would be swift.
I don't think you'll see the big grocers using it in Canada. I just think that they're too smart. They realize that consumers would be very angry.
But Canada's regulators are often spurred to action by complaints, and ESL technology is still in its infancy. Ann Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Need help studying? Well, there's an app for that. Up next, the Canadian students behind a hugely popular smartphone app. A research team studying sperm whales captured this rare footage of one of the mammals giving birth in the Caribbean. The lead biologist is a Canadian who says they were surprised to see a group of 11 females working together to facilitate the birth and repeatedly lift the calf up to the surface.
More active than I think I had considered what a sperm whale birth might look like. And all these animals sort of actively diving under and lifting the calf into the air onto their backs or their noses. You know, sets of 2 or 3 or 4 animals doing it at the same time.
The delivery lasted about 30 minutes. The calf's grandmother and aunt were among the whales helping out. Researchers believe the teamwork is necessary because the calf's tail fluke takes a few hours to unfold, and an organ in its head that regulates buoyancy is not fully developed at birth. Well, some university students in Halifax are making waves of their own. They've developed an app that uses AI to help people study. It's now been downloaded more than 2 million times. Kendra Gannon explains.
Studying is already a hard task for most students, but now a group of full-time computer science students at Dalhousie University is making it that much easier. Their app Studly AI is quickly gaining traction and recently hit 2 million users worldwide since launching in February 2025.
At the beginning, we were just building out of our homes on Discord calls and late nights and meeting in different study rooms and getting kicked out by students who had it booked over us, and we were just building on our own. It's like driving a car with no windshields and you don't know what obstacle you're going to hit next because we don't have a lot of guidance, but it's pretty rewarding.
The creators say it's not your average AI app like ChatGPT. The app, named after the infamous Dalhousie campus, serves as a studying tool, creating different study materials based on what content you input, like multiple choice, flashcards, and even your own podcast.
Hey Michael, I was just reviewing some anatomy notes, and it's fascinating how much thought goes into the very definition and terminology of the human body.
We're really driven on just taking the amount of time it takes a student to study and just squashing that down as much as possible so that they just, within a few clicks of uploading their material and generating, they have all the study material they'll need for a week of studying. We're using AI in a good way to benefit students and young people and help them use it in an effective way to learn rather than to just cheat or get the work done.
Talabzadeh and Hassan both say they wanted to create an app that is helpful for students in an effective way.
We built Studly because every study tool that we tried felt like it was built by people who hadn't been students in a really long time. And since we were students and we knew what was possible with technology, we wanted to build something that we would use ourselves.
While hitting 2 million users worldwide would be a huge accomplishment for most, Talabzadeh and Hassan say their team is going to keep their heads down to continue honing the app and adding more features ahead of exam season, believing that the future is bright for the app.
We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Like there's a billion students in the world and we just hit 2 million of that. So we'll celebrate when we hit 1 billion users.
Kendra Gannon, Global News, Halifax.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is Banff, Alberta. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Have a great night.